The tape recordings you are about to hear were recorded in undisclosed locations more than 20 years ago. They were made on an old microcassette recorder and have never been played publicly before. Some of the things that are said may be both difficult to understand due to the quality of the tapes and troubling to hear due to content. Listener discretion is advised.
That he came home this one time, and this was after he had everything and lost it and had everything and lost it. And he came home one time, and she said, she'll never forget it. He was sitting in her living room crying with heart out.
This is an interview I did with Dave Rupert's sisters and other family members. They're talking about a time long before Dave became a spy, when he returned to his hometown of Madrid in upstate New York after a string of professional failures.
Didn't know where, what he was going to do. And Joby never really showed that he was bad. No, Joby was bad inside, I mean, we never knew. And you just didn't know what Joby was feeling.
Dave's family calls him Joby. It's a nickname that's short for Joe Beef, because Dave was a big kid, even when he was little.
One of the things that Joby told was, Dad was out trying to give him money to lose him weight. So Joby thought that Dad was ashamed. And I thought he was doing the same thing to me because I was a 300-pounder. But he wasn't ashamed about it.
I spent time with Dave's family, and it gave us some insight into his personality and humor, as you hear in his sister's comments. He made friends easily, but often kept his feelings to himself. It made spy work come naturally. From a young age, money has always been on Dave's mind, probably because there was so little of it to go around.
He always said he was coin operating. We never made excuses for it. If you were, he would get paid for it. So when he did anything, he never hesitated in saying that's who he was.
But as he grew into an adult, he wasn't simply coin-operated or even just a hard worker. He was a shrewd, relentless businessman. Failure was not an option. But if it happened, he picked up the pieces and moved on. That was Dave. And he didn't care what people thought.
People either loved him or they've got nothing good to say about him. And when people was saying to me, "Oh, you're Dave Rupert's sister," I said, that depends on whether you like him or if he screwed you. You either backed the world at him or you hated him. There was no in between.
Even as his sisters recalled Dave being broke and crying on a couch after a series of setbacks, they knew it was only temporary. The kid they called Joe Beef always found a way to turn things around.
I had 2 bars in the team, lost everything, and spring out and out in Picasso and got more money. I said, how do you do that? Well, no, it's you always sounds bad. Men used to say, Joby is run on electricity. The rest of us are run on gas.
When the Drows Inn went bust in Ireland, Dave and his wife Maureen returned to America with barely a penny to their name. By then, Dave already had a lifetime of experience of going all in, only to end up broke or nearly so. But he was also clever and always came up with a way to bounce back. Like his sisters say, he runs on electricity while the rest of us run on gas.
I'm Abdon Palish.
I'm Bob Hergeth.
In partnership with Entropy Media.
This is Underbelly, the rebel kind.
The British started a policy for hundreds of years of trying to inculcate English values and culture into Ireland.
A government that lives frozen in the ice of its own indifference, willing to let its own people starve.
As it turned out later, we found out there was a rocket launcher. Do you know that you can buy up to 50 pounds of black powder in the United States?
In late 1996, after a disastrous summer and fall running a pub on the west coast of Ireland, Dave and Maureen are nearly broke. Dave has to borrow money from his father-in-law to get an apartment back in Chicago. He's been playing a wealthy American in Ireland while running a pub and doing his best to get intel on potential terrorist activity. But he's a few years in with nothing but memories to show for it. He has to get a truck and start driving again to pay the bills, because the FBI sent him adrift and the Garda don't pay. So his big plan to run a pub and get paid for information looks like a complete failure. But to hear his sisters tell it, that's nothing new for Dave. Dave had lived a whole life before embarking on his Irish adventure in the 90s. In fact, by the time he settles into his spy career, he's been through more careers than some experience in a whole lifetime. His first career was in insurance way back in the 70s.
I did very well with sales in Madrid. I was very good at sales. Unfortunately, when you sell insurance, let's get it. I got to pay an extra in the following year. Well, once the sales hype was over, my retention rate wasn't very good. So after a few years, a couple of years, the stuff comes back to haunt you. And we just didn't make enough money.
It's hard to imagine Dave working in insurance, but Dave is a natural salesman. And after that didn't pan out, it was on to the next career.
I had a friend of mine who was cutting history for a lacrosse manufacturing company on the Indian reservation. And, what they would use is they'd use the first 8 feet of the history tree, split it by hand, and then they'd steam them and bend them and lace them all by hand and so on and so forth.
If you think the transition from insurance salesman to logger comes out of nowhere, you're not wrong. That's just how Dave tells the story. He loses his job in insurance, and in the next sentence, his friend has hired him on as a logger.
I had to. That looked crazy while I was lower. I felt extremely high. And so from that, we got on to the cutting of the log. And it was extremely hard work for the chance of getting hurt. It's phenomenal. Because you had a tree down and things going to fall that way and it falls back on you.
He's gone from making cold calls to wielding a chainsaw deep in the woods. Dave didn't shy away from a dangerous job if there was money to be made.
I got my foot crushed one time. I cut the log off, and when it did, the weight of the other tree rolled back and caught my foot in between. And they called the ambulance. I get out back on the stretcher, and they just as he left, just glass door, he goes to close it like that. I realized I was probably too long. And about that much too long. His time I was the bullet in the tears squirted right in my eyes.
Not only did Dave crack a few bones in his foot, but the ambulance was too small, and they crushed his foot trying to close the door. This ended Dave's short career as a logger, and he was out of another job. According to Dave, trucking was his next step.
I went down, took this truck driving course, and I had driven truck, like straight trucks, but I never driven trailers. And took the course, went through it in about a week. So I was nervous. I took the road test, and I failed it.
Failing the road test as a first-time trucker didn't stop Dave from a good career in trucking. After all, FBI agent Ed Buckley found Dave running a trucking company many years later. Even though it was steady, reliable work, Dave still wanted more out of life and wasn't resigned to playing it safe.
Well, I was scared of that flying, and so when I was about 5 or so I decided that I need to learn how to fly to get over that.
This is just Dave being Dave. He has a fear of flying, and so he gets a pilot at the local airport to teach him how to fly.
He ran the airport for the town, and then he had the air taxi business. So he got me out flying, and he pick up, if you're off somewhere and die, or you're from home, they would hire him to go down and pick him up.
If you didn't catch that, Dave is training as a pilot and flying with the guy who's teaching him. Part of this guy's business is to pick up bodies of the deceased so they can be buried in their hometowns.
And I was never very keen on going getting the bodies because they make a lot of noise for the change the altitude when you're, because it's an unpressurized plane. Oh, that sounds awful. Yeah.
This is one of those stories that tells you a lot about Dave. He wants to get over a phobia of flying, so he decides to learn to fly and ends up dealing with dead bodies making strange noises as his instructor flies around. It's kind of a pattern. Dave often dives in headfirst and ends up getting way more than he bargained for. It's kind of how he ended up broke after an ambitious plan to run a pub in Ireland to spy on the Irish Republican Army. One thing became clear after getting to know Dave. He seemed to enjoy the risk. He might not admit it, but the danger of being undercover seemed to be part of the draw. More importantly, though, he was getting good at being a spy.
Remember Phil McCluskey from the last episode? He was an IRA operative who thought Dave was an informant when he ran the Drows Inn.
He got a letter from the prosecutor in Arizona or something saying that he wasn't wanted there anymore or something. But he's going, oh, Dave, come here, I pull over the side of the road, look at this, And, I feel very, and left it at that.
McCluskey was wanted in Arizona for trying to ship weapons to the IRA. The accused were referred to as the Tucson Six. When he receives a letter informing him that he is no longer a fugitive, he's excited to share the news with Dave. Dave had won him over. The Drows Inn may have failed as a business, but Dave knows his value as a spy. Dave returned to the U.S. with his cover intact. Joe O'Neill and the like all still think Dave is just a friendly American sympathizer. And most importantly, they don't know he's basically broke. So it shouldn't be a surprise at this point that Dave is ready to dive back in head first.
Dad used to tell us that you only go through this life once, but make a noise. Well, we are glad made a little bit of noise. And Joby definitely has made some noise.
In 1997, Maureen's daughter was a summer intern at a prestigious Chicago law firm. She found a lawyer willing to work for Dave for free, pro bono as they say in law, to negotiate a new contract with the FBI. He sends an email to his handlers in the FBI saying, I'm already in the middle of something. I just haven't gotten to the military side yet. You can't just run over there and say, hey, I want to join the IRA. Dave sets up a meeting at the FBI's Chicago office with Ed Buckley and the FBI's top lawyer in Chicago. The Drows Inn was just the beginning. Dave is ready to bounce back, and this time he's learned a few tricks. And one of them, Dave says, was that tip from the FBI's lawyer. If you don't get it in writing, don't expect to get it. This time, he wants money. Like we said, he knows his value. And now he knows that if he wants something from the government, it needs to be in writing. And Dave's no dummy. He knows to ask for his money after taxes.
I said $2 million, and Ray said, well, in order to get that, he just goes like 33% times $2 million or 3.25 million. I said, well, hey, listen, that's not my problem. That's one pocket and the other is far more concerned.
When it's time for Dave to retire from the life of international espionage, he'll need a nest egg to retire on. That is, if he survives. And you have to remember when this is all taking place. Just a few years before this, in 1993, terrorists from the Middle East had set off a bomb in the parking garage under the World Trade Center in New York in an effort to collapse the towers. U.S. intelligence services desperately needed better intel from the Middle East, a place Britain had an established network. In return, a security expert told us, Britain wanted U.S. intelligence services to finally start cracking down on Americans supporting the IRA. This is the backdrop for Buckley's work in Chicago and why Dave Rupert was suddenly of renewed interest to the FBI in 1997. So the FBI offers Dave a contract, and a good one.
Well, in the beginning, I wasn't getting anything. I was just getting expensive. Yeah. From 90s, on, I got $2,500 a month, and that gradually increased to like $4,000 a month. First of all, I don't know if anybody ever came up for a pay rate on somebody spending their life inside the IRA. Yeah. And the second thing is that I had a good profession beforehand.
He likes the travel, and he's willing to accept the dangers. It's clear how much he loves Ireland, but he's also looking for income in the short and long term.
So anyway, they came up after 3 or 4 months of haggling. They came up with those contract I got, which was a whole lot more, as I told them later, to protect the government than it was to protect me, good for me. But I figured, well, they were going to run this thing for 6 or 8 months. And so I figured I had a 6-month window or so to try to see what happened.
Dave says his first contract in 1997 is somewhat temporary. It's for 6 to 8 months, paying $2,500 a month. In true Dave fashion, he's stepping into a historical conflict with enormous political stakes where peace talks are underway. And he figures, I'll give it 6 months and see what happens. We traced the conflict through the 20th century back to the Irish Revolution, but its origins start hundreds of years earlier than that.
Most Irish people would argue that the British presence in Ireland started about 800 years ago, more than 800 years ago now, with the arrival of the British.
Yeah, we're going back a ways on this one.
My name is Professor Tim White. I teach at Xavier University in Cincinnati. I'm a professor of political science, and my specialty is Irish politics. What really caused the British presence was the fear of British kings that somehow these Anglo-Norman knights would get so ambitious they would try to come over and conquer England. So King John quickly tried to assert his power over Ireland as a way of getting the loyalty of these Anglo-Norman knights to the British crown. And they were not totally successful with this. The famous phrase in Ireland is the Anglo-Normans became more Irish than the Irish themselves, which meant that the British started a policy for hundreds of years of trying to inculcate English values and culture into Ireland, and never were very successful. Churchill famously said that he didn't understand why the Irish weren't English.
It speaks to colonial arrogance that leaders like Churchill wouldn't understand the Irish wanting to preserve their culture. So fast forward to the 17th century, and Britain's King James is a Protestant ruling over a population of Irish Catholics. He was worried that the people of Ireland were more loyal to the Pope than they were to him. So he made a move. Actually, he enticed a lot of people to move, specifically Scottish Protestants who were given farmland in exchange for moving to Ireland.
In the 17th century, there was what was called a plantation, a large group of people. In the case of Northern Ireland, they were primarily Presbyterians from Scotland, came to Northern Ireland. And the result of that was that the Northern Ireland territory became overwhelmed with these new migrants. And they actually became the demographic majority of the people living in Northern Ireland.
This has come to be called the Plantation of Ulster. Ulster referring to the 9 counties in the northern part of Ireland.
Partly, it was the combination of what the British government wanted and what these people who are Presbyterians thought would be a better life. People tend to migrate when they think they'll have more opportunity. So they must have thought Ulster provided them more opportunities. It didn't end up being such a good place because between 1750 and 1800, roughly 100 years after they arrived in Northern Ireland, they migrated to America, 500,000 of them. And they become what are called the Scots-Irish in America, the Ulster Scots, that primarily lived along the Appalachian Trail. That's where they migrated to.
When we mentioned earlier about the roots of bluegrass deriving from Scots-Irish music, this is where that comes from, with the sound of Appalachia. So if you're American and you've long been told that your family was Scots-Irish, but you don't know how, they might have been part of that first wave of immigrants who came originally from Scotland by way of Northern Ireland.
Just a half century after, in the 1840s, a massive Irish diaspora lands in America, prompted by one of the bleakest times in Irish history.
I believe it was in 2013 or 2014, a colleague and I participated in a legal and academic conference at Fordham University that was about British culpability for the deaths of the Irish famine.
This is Sean Tenner, a political consultant and the ward boss of Chicago's 46th Ward. We met at a restaurant to talk a little more in depth about an event you've probably heard referred to as the Irish potato famine.
It looked at the famine from a legal perspective, in essence, a war crimes trial about the actions of the British government and whether or not it would be considered a genocide, And by modern standards, who would be held responsible? Now, of course, now it's not in vogue to say famine for the obvious reason that there was plenty of food in Ireland at the time. There certainly was a virus that impacted the potato, but as we all know, the potato was not the only food available to people in the 1840s. All the other food was taken out of the country by the British. So,
What is the agreed terminology now? Forced starvation, or what would we call it?
Great hunger. Great hunger is the
Gorta
English.
Mór, right?
Yes.
The Great Hunger, or as they say in Gaelic, An Gorta Mór, lasted from 1845 to 1852. But the Great Hunger was not just a famine. It was a manifestation of Britain's cold and calculating version of colonialism that reduced Ireland's native population by about a quarter through both starvation and emigration.
The public policy lessons from the Great Hunger are still applicable today. A government that lives frozen in the ice of its own indifference, willing to let its own people starve, bears culpability, and these policy decisions have consequences. Every other government in Europe would not have let their own people starve in a way that was very much preventable.
After Ireland was formally made part of the UK in 1801, 80% of the native population were poor Catholics. They couldn't own land and were in turn governed by a wealthy class of absentee landlords who mostly lived in England. By the 1840s, most native Irish were dependent on potatoes as a main source of food due to the British colonists exporting most other foods out of Ireland. Tariffs enacted by the British made grains like corn prohibitively expensive for the poor farmers in Ireland who were stuck working the fields owned by the absentee British landlords. So when a virus infected most of Ireland's potato crops, the only food the Irish had access to was rotten. So a fair percentage of the people who live in Ireland, Northern Ireland, would consider this a genocide or attempted genocide, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And one recollection I have from the tribunal at Fordham, they brought attorneys, I think it was a New York State Supreme Court justice, legal scholars both from Ireland and the United States to argue both sides. And interestingly enough, they had the Irish students argue the case that it was not a genocide, and they had the English students argue the case that it was a genocide. But I remember the point that stuck in my mind the most was the side saying that it wasn't a genocide said it couldn't have been. Money was, at the beginning, given to provide relief for the people starving in Ireland. And then the other side said, well, if the goal of giving the relief is to stop people from dying, then what was the goal of taking the relief away? There's no other answer. The goal of taking the relief away was to kill people off and foster the consolidation of agricultural properties and basically turn Ireland into a factory farm for the English ruling class.
Initially, the UK sent aid to the Irish people. But then, the relief was simply cut off with no explanation, leaving the Irish to fend for themselves, or, more likely, to just starve.
If you read and you learn about what happened there and the agonizing deaths of millions of people and the way that famine, that tragedy was just overlooked, both in a sense of historiography and popular culture, that was never commemorated. That was whitewashed through history. People would joke about it. If you even bring up the subject, if you're not talking to people who study the history, it's kind of a joke. Like, oh, why didn't they eat something other than potatoes? Blah, blah, blah. That incident never got its due. The people who died, suffered, emigrated. It was never the culpability for the folks who did that. The blame was never placed where it should have been. Like, their lives need to be commemorated, and not just commemorated by saying a prayer, but by doing things to right historical wrongs. For 100 years, it just wasn't talked about. You know, they say history is written by the winners.
Yeah.
Well, the people who died or immigrated during the Irish famine were by no means the winners.
Much of Irish folk music tells the stories of Ireland and her people. But one topic that runs thin in the canon of Irish folk music is the Great Hunger, because it was pure devastation.
Oh, son I love my native land with energy and pride, till a blind came over the praties, my sheep and cattle died. My rent and taxes went unpaid, them I'd not redeemed. And that's the cruel reason I left old Skibbereen.
It's important to lay out the backdrop of British oppression that had been forced upon the native people of Ireland. When we describe the Irish Republican cause as having deep roots, it's because it goes back centuries. And it affects people on both sides of the Atlantic. As Dave skips back and forth across the pond, he has to know this history because the resolve of Irish Republicans is rooted in centuries-old oppression. It's the kind of conviction that isn't cast aside easily.
Oh, son, I do remember the bleak December day when the landlord and the sheriff came to take us all away. They set my roof on fire.
Dave Rupert can come across as amoral. You know, kind of a hired gun, obviously about the money. But he seems to have a sense of right and wrong. He has some kind of guiding principles. He told us at least once on tape that he wouldn't kill anybody, and his ultimate goal was to prevent terrorist attacks, senseless violence.
Yeah, if you remember, he said he saw a clear line between a legitimate military endeavor and militants that attacked civilian targets like the IRA too often do. If you remember Sean Pagachnik explaining in the first episode, the IRA had an MO, a signature formula, if you will. IRA engineers would build a bomb with whatever supplies they could get their hands on. Then an IRA foot soldier would drive into a town, plant it near a target, sometimes places like a police station or a British patrol. Then the IRA would call in a warning, making sure the area would be evacuated. Then, boom, the bomb goes off and the target is decimated, but no one is killed. The IRA is basically demonstrating the idea, see what we could do if we didn't give you a warning?
Dave's mission is to be the canary in the coal mine. If he hears something might be in the works, report it. But things sometimes went another way. There were purposeful attacks, and sloppiness led to mistakes and carnage. The bombing of Harrods department store in London in 1983 killed 6 people, including a man from Chicago. The car bomb injured nearly 100, though the IRA claimed it was not authorized and regretted the civilian casualties. Dave says the guys behind these kinds of bombings are playing fast and loose with people's lives and livelihoods. With his new agreement in hand and a fair salary in his pocket, he begins constant contact with the FBI, who connects him with MI5, Britain's domestic spy agency, basically their FBI. He will eventually email daily, sometimes more, to keep his handlers up to date on everything he knows. Under instructions from his supervisors, Dave resumes his trips to Ireland, primarily visiting Joe O'Neill in Bundoran and Vincey Murray in Sligo.
We're walking down the street in Sligo. Dave, where'd you get home? I mean, I almost fell over, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like he was dead.
Yeah.
And that's what I thought. And we took him there.
Yeah.
I knew you, and you knew everyone. And
I really miss that.
Dave says he really feels in his element back in Ireland, where he's a welcome sight to many who knew him. Upon returning to Ireland, Dave picks up where he left off, hanging with the same folks who continue educating him on Irish history and republicanism.
Now, one of Joe's top deputies in the Republican movement is Declan Cerneen, who Dave says looks like a leprechaun, short and beardy, and who lived up on the mountain on land his family has farmed for 400 years.
I mean, Declan's like the leprechaun from up on the mountain. The family's been up there for 400 years. I'm sure that the family tree, the limbs out of there. You got to realize that good Republicans don't drink because they always need to be sharp. Welcome probably don't work to work time around the dome. But if you're not drinking better, was questionable. And that was a quote by Black Nicole, who was one of the continuity school guys.
Declan tells Dave that true Republicans never drink because they need to be ready to take up arms and fight at a moment's notice. When Dave and Maureen have dinner at Declan's house, he tells them the story of his grandfather out cutting turf in the field and seeing weasels having a funeral. 2 of them were supposedly carrying a third who was deceased. They concluded the creatures were enchanted.
Tell me that as well. You know, or leave the road with animal. Yeah. About them being enchanted because his grandfather one time he was cutting turf down the field and he saw them having a funeral. And they were all carrying, there was a family weasel carrying a third weasel with a bow. And they were enchanted, or there's certain trees that were enchanted, there were certain flowers.
From then on, Dave's handlers in both the FBI and later in Britain's MI5 would tease him about whether he had attended any weasel funerals lately. Dave also got an education at Joe's pub about what words you can and cannot say when hanging with Republicans.
Another thing you had to always watch was referring to the North as Northern Ireland. You know, that was a real trip item. You know?
What would you call it?
Acolyte Ireland. Well, the North was pretty acceptable. You know, the North or, the 6 counties. But there was just a lot of things like that.
Now that he doesn't have his own pub, Dave is working the door at Joe O'Neill's bar as a bouncer. One night, Dave is at Joe's bar, and as Joe is singing on stage, someone comes up and whispers in Joe's ear. Joe immediately leaves to take an injured IRA man to a doctor. The IRA man was delivering a Semtex bomb when the detonator prematurely exploded in the back of the cab. It blew off 3 of the guy's fingers. Joe concocted a story at a Sligo hospital that the man had been lighting off some of Dave's American fireworks that blew off the fingers. But the guards didn't buy Joe's bogus story for a minute. The next day, Joe asked Dave to get him the remains of some big American fireworks. He wants to show the ashes to the Garda. So Dave flew back to Chicago that day, bought fireworks in Indiana, set them off, and sent the scraps to Joe. The ploy failed, and the man was sentenced to 7 years in prison. But Dave's efforts further endeared him to Joe and bolstered his credentials as a Republican.
In the 90s, the IRA has once again decided to try to take the war to Britain like they'd done a decade earlier. Britain's MI5 knows the Americans have this asset, Dave Rupert. They make it known they'd like to have Dave report to them too. But Dave is leery about going out on loan to another division. It didn't work out so well with the Garda.
At the end of the day, we'd more than got over that hump. But at the time when I met Norman, we weren't over that hump. And as I know both about it.
Dave flies over to London and meets an MI5 operative he calls Norman. He didn't know it, but he was about to get his first real spy training. Dave says he was integral in not only convincing him to spy for MI5, but also in teaching Dave what spying really was. We've been unable to track Norman down, so Dave's story is the only way we know anything about him. And British intelligence wouldn't comment. This tape has seen better days, so bear with us.
Norman was just too cool. I mean, he was a super nice guy. And he would have been a real old school. He'd been in there, business all his life. And we stopped at Winchester, England. Stopped at Winchester Cathedral. And in the middle of the town of the statue of King Alfred, I think it's King Alfred I. And he put it with the first British spy. And told me the story about it. And that probably left more of an impression in my mind than anything through the whole deal. Because apparently old King Alfred took off his military garb and put on some peasant garb and went after the neighbors, right into the opposing army's campsite and sit down with them and chatted. And then brought the information back, and with that, they were able to defeat him.
Norman told Dave a tale of King Alfred, who went undercover in the clothes of a peasant to obtain information on his enemy back in the 9th century. He was a young king under attack from the Vikings. As one account noted, Alfred is said to have arrived in disguise at a Viking camp and taking refuge in a swineherd's cottage. In another legend, Alfred dressed as a minstrel to learn his enemy's secrets. It's a history and mythology that Dave was becoming part of. His run-in with Norman was motivating to say the least, but also taught Dave to nurture one of his natural talents, blending in.
He was a real cool. I'm sure that's why he had the ambition. Yeah, he was a real likable guy. He was I couldn't give you the description of him. I could, but I can't.
Dave says Norman was so pedestrian in appearance, he couldn't even describe him, and he says Maureen completely missed it when he approached Dave. If the FBI's Ed Buckley was a Yosemite Sam type character in Dave's mind, with frenetic energy, Norman was cool along the lines of, I don't know, the unflappable Bugs Bunny. Okay, maybe a bad comparison, but you get the point.
We let him in on the way back out. When he knew I was going to meet with him, meet him in the lobby, and he thought we were waiting for us. Yeah. And I was up at the hotel now. The next thing I know, he's beside me, and he's got a couple things, like a room number. But I said, okay, I went back over and sit down.
Dave said Norman just appeared at his side, told him a room number where to meet him, and then walked away, so quickly and discreetly that Maureen didn't even notice.
So that's how well he blended in, Yeah, I ever had any powder. It's that, looking like, and you don't do somebody that's overweight, or you don't do somebody that, that's different, what I mean? And not true with British intelligence. Yeah.
Dave is awestruck. It's like this meeting with Norman was an encounter with a mystical spy guru. Dave feels like he's seen a spy in action and is inspired to blend into his role among Irish Republicans, the way Norman blended into the lobby of the hotel. Dave leaves England with a sense of purpose and greater confidence that maybe, just maybe, he can get something important done. For the next few months, Dave follows around Joe O'Neill and keeps tabs on him.
Oh, we go like we'd be driving the north and he'd be hiding his beard.
Yeah, hiding his beard because he thinks he's wanted up there.
Yeah, he would tell us that looking for him.
And, he'd always ride like this, because he was a big beard.
But he didn't have to side. When I saw him, he was big red.
Yeah, but I mean, he would go like this so they didn't see it right.
Dave said he was always amused by the way Joe thought he needed to obscure his trademark big bushy beard with his hand when they drove by police. To Dave, Joe seemed to enjoy his reputation as an IRA leader more than actually being one. He liked to tell stories and sing songs about the cause, but he didn't strike Dave as particularly dangerous.
Joe and Neil and that crowd, they didn't really want to hurt anybody because, they're 60 years old and financially set. Let's just make a little trouble so we don't wind up in jail. They just want to kind of play. Yeah, and they want to, maybe once a year, they want to put out something. What was it, in December, I think, or so, they put out that bomb in the Customs House, the Ernest Geller. All they did was force the Florida Customs House. They didn't want to really hurt it. We just want to, make a statement.
He came to think of Joe and his people as accidental terrorists, as we previously noted. Dave says it seems like it was almost like a game to Joe O'Neill and his companions, who had old-fashioned protocols. They wanted a united Ireland, but God forbid the police knock on the door on the Sabbath.
The guy that raided your house on Sunday, everybody was just appalled about it. It's like, it's Sunday, can you believe that?
The problem, Dave says, is what they were playing with, because bombs and close calls, the signature of the IRA, are bound to go awry. But there were even more dangerous elements lurking in the IRA, looking to cause even more havoc. As his contract is about to run out, Dave worries he hasn't made enough progress burrowing into that darker element.
Just something happened and just, come on, want to go for a ride? I said, sure. Let's take your car. So I knew something about Big Nerd. I would always be riding with Joe. So he says that we were on the Letterkenny. So we used to from Dundora, right? So we go to, we head out towards Letterkenny. And says, we're looking, seeing Garda. And that's what we're looking for.
Joe tells Dave they're looking for police as they drive along border roads in the northwest of Ireland.
So we go out, drive around with Letterkenny, and go around the loop this way. Here I am. And Letterkenny is up in North Donegal.
Okay.
Okay. It's it's on the road to there. You can also go home up there.
Aside from working the door at Joe's bar and getting to know the Republicans who come and go, this is part of Dave's day in and day out when he starts his new contract. He drives around with Joe so Joe can scout police along the roads. Joe generally didn't volunteer why they were doing these drives, and Dave didn't always press him. Dave theorizes they wanted to move supplies, but he couldn't be sure.
When we get to Letterkenny and we coming back, he said, okay, you're looking for, we're looking for a car with this plate number and stuff, or the prefix of the plate number. And so that's when he told me they had the bikes come up through.
Dave doesn't know why Joe's telling him to look for it, but he reports the car's information to his handlers just in case.
So when I got back, I reported the thing I reported it. And they managed to break the operation up because they brought in, the guard went in and passed a bunch of people, and they put, the one that's got the cab business in Letterkenny, they put him in jail overnight. I had in my email that the price was probably going to Gary and Omar, really the only two places. And as it turned out later, we found out it was a rocket launcher, but this was maybe a year later.
This is what pricks the hair up on the back of Dave's neck. For Joe O'Neill in the Continuity IRA, he has a connection directly to the largest free market of weapons in the world, the United States of America. That's when Dave begins to get worried. He knows that a little firepower can go a long way in the IRA's hands.
I think they call it a BMG 50. It's a 50 caliber sniper rifle. Got a shell in it about that round. They got a 1 mile accuracy to 1 mile. A few years ago, there was a British soldier shot with a sniper rifle up on Belfast Road. He was shot in the chest with a sniper rifle, and from considerable distance, I know that the real IRA had several of them, and they're looking for more of them. The accuracy is tremendous. But you can buy them. There's a gun trading post up here called Petlaws.
When Dave says you can buy it up here, he's referring to the United States, where a deadly sniper rifle could be purchased with little scrutiny, unlike in Ireland or Britain. It's how a 50 caliber rifle could be purchased with ease and then, say, packed into a tractor axle and shipped covertly from a post office in Oak Park, Illinois, to Ireland.
You can buy them in there. They got them hanging on the wall. Wherever on the ship. And what would you shoot with them? If you hunt a deer with them and blow the deer apart. The 50 caliber shooting gun round, that's what it is. It's got too much thrust to it. It's got a shock absorber in the stock because and they got them like $2,600. They got them hanging on the wall up there for sale.
Dave's family hunted and fished in rural New York, but even he found it crazy that a 50 caliber rifle could be purchased so easily. And when he mentions it to the FBI, they don't believe it.
We were talking about it, and my FBI friend and I said, I think by the ammunition with low, but nothing, not even a driver's license, that'd be good. Well. So you're going to about 3 or 4 rounds of ammunition, just take them back and prove to them that you go there and buy it with. And that's what the main I'm around. Do you know that you can buy up to 50 pounds of black powder in the United States with a copy of your driver's license through the mail?
Dave had only been bringing Joe some phones, maybe a few fax machines, occasionally giving him a little cash. But now things were getting heavy. Dave realizes just how easily he could supply Joe with weapons. The kind of sniper rifle and ammunition that killed a British soldier was available to purchase in the U.S. by virtually anyone over 18. Dave's been making regular trips to Ireland under contract, but that's almost up. He stops in to see Joe O'Neill before going back stateside, maybe even for the last time.
You'd go in there and the wind off the sea there, and you go in there and come in and have tea. You go in there. He had this little dog called Rebel. It was a little like Jack Russell Terrier, and the fucking dog would pull the covers up over himself, like in the chair, he pulled whatever was there up over himself because he was cold. He sat there and the steam, like you can see your breath, and they're all having a tea. Isn't it a wonderful day? That's great,
In the persistent, damp Irish cold of Joe's office, Dave tells Joe, "I'm going back to the States. Is there anything I can do to help the cause?" Joe looked up from his old wooden desk. "Yes," he said. Joe O'Neill tells Dave to find a group in Chicago run by a man named Frank O'Neill, no relation. He said Frank's group is a source of money. They donate to the cause, and he also gives Dave a shopping list. Dave says Joe wants Semtex, detonator cord, and detonators. He warns Dave to be careful shipping bomb supplies. Teddy bears are good vehicles for the Semtex. Jump ropes disguise det cord well, and radios are a good place to hide detonators. This is what Dave was after. This is what MI5 was after. And it all goes back to Chicago. That's next time on The Rebel Kind.
If you liked this episode of The Rebel Kind, you could do us a favor by leaving a positive review on whatever hosting service you're listening to us on.
The Rebel Kind is created and hosted by Bob Herguth and Abdon Palish. Executive producer, Anjay Nagpal. Written by Dalton Main, Abdon Palish, and Bob Herguth. Senior producer, Dalton Main.
Editing and sound design by Katherine Anderson. Original music by Dale Eisinger. Mixing by Gerard Bauer. Show art by Rebecca Hendon.
Our show was recorded in the podcast studio at Roosevelt University. Our development producers were Danielle Elliott and Jen Swan.
Marketing support from Tessa Cairns Clay. Production legal by Bruns, Brennan, and Barry. Legal clearance fair use by Rachel Strom at Davis Wright Tremaine.
From Entropy Media, the Underbelly series was created by Anjay Nagpal. Executive producer, Josh Fielstad. Executive producer, Gerard Bauer. Head of operations is Nuna Ebo. Project manager is Sebastian Perry. Associate producer, Heidi Rudvoets. Development and production support, Simona Kessler.
Special thanks to Flynn McRoberts for calling us in 20 years ago. This series is dedicated to the innocent victims of Northern Ireland's decades of violence.